Wholly sponsored by Skillshare. Plaintiff Apple Inc. Apple brings this action to stop the misappropriation of Apple's trade secrets by its former employee, Simon Lancaster. And Simon Lancaster, allegedly, I'm going to just emphasize allegedly through all of this because nothing has yet been proven in court. No one has been found guilty of anything yet. So Simon Lancaster was an advanced materials lead and product design architect at Apple, where he worked on things like the Magic Mouse, the iPad, the MacBook Air, the Unibody Macs in general, the 2013 Mac Pro, and also, yes, the butterfly keyboard and the 2016 MacBook Pro with Touch Bar redesign. Despite over a decade of employment at Apple, Lancaster abused his position and trust within the company to systematically disseminate Apple's sensitive trade secret information in an effort to obtain personal benefits. He used his seniority to gain access to internal meetings and documents outside the scope of his job's responsibilities containing Apple's trade secrets, and he provided these trade secrets to his outside media correspondent. The correspondent then published the stolen trade secrets in articles, citing a source at Apple. On multiple occasions, Lancaster proposed that the correspondent give benefit to Lancaster in exchange for Apple's trade secrets. For example, Lancaster proposed that the correspondent provide favorable coverage of a startup company in which Lancaster was an investor as a quid pro quo. Lancaster even recruited the correspondent to serve as his personal investigator. In one instance, Lancaster requested that the correspondent explore a rumor that could prove harmful to a company in which Lancaster had invested. And I'll get into what exactly that rumor and that company could have been in a very hot minute. Lancaster's role as the correspondent's source deepened even after he announced his resignation from his role at Apple. Indeed, Apple's internal investigation of the Apple-owned devices provided to Lancaster as part of his employment shows that after Lancaster announced his resignation, he communicated with the correspondent regarding specific Apple trade secrets sought by the correspondent and took specific steps to obtain additional Apple trade secrets. And yeah, again, all of this is still alleged, but misappropriating Apple trade secrets using devices owned and operated by Apple does not sound like the work of a criminal mastermind. The trade secrets Lancaster stole and sent to the correspondent for publication included details of unreleased Apple hardware products, unannounced feature changes to existing hardware products, and future product announcements, all of which Apple guards closely. And just the size of the AirPods on this alleged guy. Apple's product teams, innovators, designers, and builders work in complete secrecy, often for many years, and at significant personal burden, all to surprise and delight Apple's customers with their creations. The deceitful and indefensible release of these product details, enabled by Lancaster's misappropriation, has undermined the morale of the teams that worked on the products and features in question. Further, forensic review of the devices Apple provided to Lancaster for his work at Apple shows Lancaster and the correspondent coordinated to pilfer specific documents and product information from Apple. On numerous occasions, the correspondent had requested Lancaster obtain specific Apple trade secret documents and information. On multiple occasions, Lancaster then sent the correspondent certain of the requested confidential materials using Apple-owned devices. On other occasions, Lancaster met with the correspondent in person to provide them with the requested confidential Apple information. The full extent of their conspiracy is presently unknown. However, Apple's investigation is ongoing. They met in person. Forget the size of the AirPods. We're talking HomePods, and not even mini, it's HomePods Biggie at this point. After Lancaster's resignation, he began working at a company that served as a vendor for Apple under a vendor service agreement. Portions of the trade secret information Lancaster misappropriated relate directly to his role at his new employer, and it's likely Lancaster's misuse of Apple's trade secrets continues to this day. In fact, on his last day at Apple, Lancaster downloaded a substantial number of confidential Apple documents from Apple's corporate network onto his personal computer that would benefit his new company. And just FYI, that company, that vendor, is Aris Composites, where Lancaster became the head of consumer products. In spring 2019, Lancaster expressed to the Correspondent in profane terms his displeasure with Apple. His displeasure on Information and Belief was based on a story published that day that reported a rumor that Apple would produce a new hardware product. Shortly thereafter, Lancaster asked the Correspondent to investigate the substance of that story because it could mean trouble for my Lancaster startup. The Correspondent replied, "I'll see what I can find out." So what on Information and Belief means is just that it's not based on first-hand information, it's based on second-hand information that the declarant, in this case Apple, believes is true. And smart money on that rumor was AirTags, which was reported on in April of 2019, with the startup very likely being SmartMimic, a company Lancaster invested over $500,000 in the previous December. On October 10, 2019, the Correspondent requested additional confidential information from Lancaster related to another unannounced Apple project, referred to herein as Project X. And right now, it seems like the water cooler talk is that Project X was AR and VR, given that quite a few of the stories about that Apple special project group landed at about that time. On October 15, 2019, Lancaster submitted his resignation to Apple, and he began offboarding from his roles within the company. Per Apple's policies and Lancaster's contracts with Apple, Lancaster was obliged to return all documents and devices containing SAI to Apple and deliver to Apple all documents and materials of any kind pertaining to his work, but Lancaster violated each of these obligations. And SAI here just means secret Apple information. On October 16, 2019, the Correspondent asked Lancaster, "Can you grab me those docs before you leave?" Lancaster responded, "Which ones?" And the Correspondent then identified specific Apple confidential documents that they wanted Lancaster to misappropriate. Later that month, Lancaster informed the Correspondent that he intended to attend a meeting regarding Project X. So yeah, I am just way beyond even a HomePod Biggie. They're the size of a Mac Pro at this point. On October 24, 2019, Lancaster requested that Apple grant him access to additional SAI related to 2 other confidential Apple projects. November 1, 2019, 10:24 p.m., Lancaster used his credentials to log on to Apple's secure corporate network from a location outside Apple facilities. On Information and Belief, Lancaster used this access to download additional SAI before his login credentials expired. And just dun-dun, Law and Order, dun-dun. Mere days after Lancaster's final day at Apple, Lancaster had a call with the Correspondent and later congratulated the Correspondent about the success of an article that disclosed SAI that Lancaster had misappropriated in his final weeks of employment at Apple. Now, in case you're rewinding or scouring the internet for it, there is absolutely no mention made of who this Correspondent might be. Not beyond that it reads, at least to me, like a writer, not a podcaster, not a YouTuber, and someone in the US, not anyone in Asia. And while that does narrow down the potential candidates quite a bit, it also doesn't really single out any one specific person. It's like a game of Clue in the middle where you have your short lists of suspects, but just not enough information to yell out, "I accuse" at any point yet. And so I don't want to speculate on anything that could adversely affect anyone's reputation or career. But if you, yes you, are watching and you suddenly find yourself looking for an all-new career in illustration or design, photography, video, freelancing, well, Skillshare can help. No, hear me out. Because it isn't just one class, even several classes. It's an online learning community that offers membership with meaning and with an annual subscription that's less than $10 a month, which makes it just all the more affordable during a transition. And with real projects to create and the support of real fellow creatives, more than 7 million of us learning with Skillshare. And the first 1,000 of you, maybe including you, who click on the link in the description will get a free trial of Skillshare Premium, totally free. So act now and start learning today. And clicking on that link really does help out this channel. Hit the playlist above for more Apple drama, all the Apple tea, Facebook, Google, Epic, antitrust, All of it. Just hit that playlist and I'll see you in the next video.